Overworked and burnt out. The responsibility of the household falls on your shoulders. If you don't do it, nobody will. Meanwhile, you're partnered with lazy, leaving everything for you to do. Nothing is done for anyone else except themselves. Me? You just wish you had some time for yourself. I'm not your mother. Do it yourself. I'm Ronald, and I'm a relationship and family therapist. And we're here to talk about that feeling of burnout, because you are responsible for everything in the household. And the things for you to consider in order to save yourself, your relationship, and your sanity. It's a common dynamic in many relationships, not just intimate ones. One person is over-responsible for another. And because of this over-responsibility, the other person is enabled into being under-responsible. This is how it looks. One person is over-responsible, the other under-responsible. What happens is the over-responsible feels overworked and eventually burnt out. You know you're burnt out when the small things start to trigger big responses. But because of the over-responsibility, over time, the under-responsible becomes dependent and disempowered. The under-responsible becomes reliant on the over-responsible in order to complete tasks. And in some situations, this can lead to feelings of disempowerment and lack of confidence because they never got any experience in problem solving for themselves. This can lead to a vicious cycle as the under-responsible becomes more under-responsible, and the over-responsible is then feeling the need to be even more responsible. So how can we break this vicious cycle? How can we change this stance? The over-responsible needs to step down and be less responsible, while the under-responsible needs to step up to be more responsible. It takes two to tango. Ideally, two people need to cooperate in order to resolve this cycle. If the under-responsible fails to step up when the over-responsible steps down, the over-responsible's stress and anxiety will shoot through the roof. Conflict ensues, and the cycle continues, getting more vicious over time. In the step down of responsibility, the over-responsible will need to sacrifice quality or quantity. And this involves some level of acceptance, compromise, and tolerance. The motto of the over-responsible is, if you want it done right, do it yourself. But we know this eventually leads to burnout. So the over-responsible needs a system to evaluate and prioritize, and to figure out when and where they are able to step down. They need to determine what responsibilities are important versus not important, and whether it's urgent or not so urgent. If it's something really important and really urgent, you may not want to wait around for it to be done, because that will lead to stress and anxiety. Meanwhile, if it's not so important and not so urgent, but you're running around trying to get everything done because if you don't do it, no one else will, this will equally lead to stress and anxiety. So evaluating which responsibilities can be relinquished based off importance and urgency. This evaluation of tasks is equally as important for the under-responsible to learn, but in an opposing way. Often the over-responsible is over-responsible because it's their way of resolving anxiety. But furthermore, being over-responsible often provides them with a sense of self-worth. Being able to contribute and care for the people that they love gives them a sense of self-worth. But if you give a man a fish, you feed him for a day. If you teach a man to fish, you feed him for a lifetime. By being over-responsible, you may be taking away the other person's chance at self-worth, taking away from their own personal growth and their opportunity to contribute to the relationship or to develop their own sense of self. As the over-responsible takes a step down from responsibilities, those responsibilities transform. Instead, the over-responsible becomes responsible for boundaries, to say no, and for having the other be responsible for themselves. Because being over-responsible is often tied to self-worth, the over-responsible often think, aren't I just being selfish by not doing all that I can for my loved ones? Not when it means sacrificing your own well-being and hence sacrificing your relationships. Self-care is not selfish, it's self-worth. And you can't save a drowning person when you yourself are drowning. You need to save yourself first. But some responsibilities may realistically not be able to be relinquished. A protective factor for burnout is knowing one's impact. And in relationship, this means gratitude. Sharing as the under-responsible how the actions of your partner have contributed to your life, to your well-being, to your needs, and the pleasurable feelings in being fulfilled in such a way. This stance doesn't just happen in the division of labor. It occurs in rescuing or attempting to fix someone else's problem. And as we know, being over-responsible doesn't help resolve the issue. But when you change the music, you change the dance.